Hey, good morning. This morning we're in the absolutely beautiful Doughton Park at what is known as Wildcat Rock, mile marker 241 on the Blue Ridge Parkway. My name is Lenny Coddle. We're here this morning to introduce to you a project that we've been working on that we're calling the virtual hike to the Coddle cabin. This is my brother Phill, and so Phill and I are great grandsons of Martin Coddle. And Martin Coddle's homestead is in the small clearing that's right behind me down here, and it's a log cabin that was constructed likely at the end of the in the 1890s, likely, and Martin and his wife Jannie Blevins had a family of 14 children, and our grandfather, whose name was Lenny Coddle, was the oldest of those 14 children. Today, the cabin and all of the beautiful Basin Cove that you see behind me is all part of the national park, part of the Blue Ridge Parkway. Phill, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm an outdoors person, and I've always done construction all my life, and when it was time to retire, I decided, what am I going to do? I thought about that, and said, I went on the internet and I checked this out, and the trail was available. No one had adopted the trail on Basin Cove, and I contacted the Park Service and asked them if me and Lenny could adopt the trail, and they said by all means. So we signed up for that, and we've been doing this for 10 years now. And we come up here about 3 times a year on average, and clear the trail and clear around the cabin, and maintain that, and so it'd make it safe for people coming in and out. They can see where they're walking and enjoy it more. And we want to do this for as long as we are able to, and because it's our family heritage, and we're thankful for the Park Service that they have chose to make this one of their tourist attraction places.
So Martin Coddle was the I believe the 8th child that was born to Harrison Coddle, his dad, and what we suspect is that Harrison came up into the cove at a period of time. It was just after the Civil War. He may have been trying to hide from the Home Guard as they were trying to round up soldiers to go fight for the Confederacy. Harrison had spent just a very short period of time in the Confederacy, he and his brother John, and then I think they came up into the cove to kind of get away from it all. So to give you a little bit of a lay of the land, if we start out at Long Bottom, which is down here in the area that I'm pointing right now, the trails in Doughton Park are basically a loop. If you work in this direction, you'd go up the Flat Rock Ridge Trail, up the Bluff Mountain Trail, and loop back up into the bluffs this way. And then going in the opposite direction, you'd go up the Cedar Ridge Trail, which climbs maybe 1,500 feet or so, up to the Brenniger cabin, which is off in this area that I'm pointing to right now. And then that would come out and flatten out into the bluffs coming in from the other direction. You can see behind me down here that little clearing, and that's where Martin and Jannie's cabin was at, or is at, not was, is. And it's right at the headwater of Basin Creek. And then Basin Creek kind of wanders. You can almost see the cove in the valley where the creek wanders down, and it's about 3.5 miles from the cabin down to what is now known as the primitive campground. And that area was once just about 75 acres of premium pasture land down in the bottom of flat land. But Martin's cabin and that clearing right there was part of about a 90-acre tract that that his father Harrison had acquired at some point in time. And that 90-acre tract would just basically comprise the entire that little cove area there. So the family cemetery is about a half-mile downstream. On the left, you can kind of see a ridge line that cuts down through there. That's approximately where it's at. Between Martin's cabin here and the primitive campground, which is again about 3.5 miles downstream, there might be perhaps a dozen old homesteads, and they're all just remains of chimneys now. But Harrison actually lived up in there, and his brothers lived up in there as well. His brother's name was Thomas Matthew, and his brother Ruffin. So the three brothers were living up in the cove for a period of time. I know at least in the 1890s, the three of them were there. And there was a mill site, which was a 44-acre tract that Thomas's cabin was on. And so they had a really nice mill up in there. And when we do the virtual hike, you'll see the millstone, and we'll also talk about where that mill site was at. But when you think about lifestyle, you know, they were subsistence farmers. My grandfather's brother, whose name was also Harrison, just to make it more confusing, he talked when he was interviewed with App State, and he talked about, you know, how they would have a couple of hogs, and they might have, you know, a single head of cattle, not many. You know, they'd have large gardens, and those types of things. So they were definitely subsistence farmers. Harrison was renowned for making shoes, and I guess if you have 22 kids, you have to make shoes, I would imagine. But so you know, it's a very different lifestyle than what we're accustomed to today, and they were a genuine pioneer family, so Martin and Jannie lived up in the cove, and they lived at the cabin until 1916. At that point in time, you know, there was a flood that came through and pretty much decimated the cove. And Harrison stayed. After the flood, but most everybody else decided to leave. Some of the other families that were in here, there was a fellow by the name of Blevins, and he owned some property down, just downstream a little bit from the mill site. There was a fellow by the name of Thomas Samuel Curry, I believe I got that right, and he was working at the mill. He married Alvis's daughter. So there were a couple of other families that lived up in here besides the Coddle families, but primarily everything that was upstream of the primitive camp was occupied by our family. And then down in the flatland, the Alexander family owned most everything from the primitive camp all the way out to Long Bottom Road.
I want to give you a little information about what's involved in doing trail maintenance. It's pretty challenging because you've got to carry all your equipment in. Sometimes we'll be using weed eaters, sometimes we'll be using chainsaws. And you got to carry those in, plus your gas and oil, all your food and water for the day. And it's a pretty hard hike without any of that, just to hike in and out. And you're crossing a creek approximately 20 times in and naturally 20 times back. So there are obstacles that you're faced with and hazards about creek crossings, and you can fall, you can get hurt. This is one of my trophies from last trail maintenance day. But you have to be careful, and that's why we're doing it. We want to make it as safe as possible for the people who are going in and out, and so that they really enjoy their hike and don't get hurt. Now from here you can see the clearing that we maintain around the cabin, but you won't be able to see the trail without actually hiking it. And I've been hiking this ever since I was in my early 20s, and I'll soon be 74. And I've hiked a lot of other trails. This is one of the prettiest hikes I have ever been on anywhere. And mostly it's because of the creek crossings. They're beautiful. So if you have an opportunity, please come and enjoy this and be safe.